said, "Oh, hello, Jane, I haven't seen you in a long time," to this total stranger. And when we decompressed afterwards, they told me, well, maybe that's a little too scary because the person who is being harassed felt like, now I have two crazy people. So they suggested maybe check first. And then.
All right, good discussion. Okay, what else?
Because of my personal history, for almost all my life, I've avoided conflict. Goes back to a dysfunctional family. So I am fighting years and years and years being one of those people that wants to flee. How can I get over this?
Wow, can we just give her a hand for sharing thank you for saying that so plainly, because you're not alone, clearly. Like, there's a lot of people in this room who wouldn't have said that, but we're all with you. I think that, again, my best response to that would be thinking about, in that moment, what kind of support would you need, or what would look like help or support for you, and then trying to offer that to that person. And like I said, it doesn't have to be in the moment. It can be after. Like, it would be a little bit weird to follow that person off of the bus or train and then follow up with them if you don't know them, but just to let them know, you know what, are you okay? You did not deserve that. Or just something quick to let them know, like, no one should be treated that way, and you did nothing to deserve that. And I think whether it's in a bullying situation with our kids or adults who are being harassed or targeted, just that showing support can go a long way. So start there, and then once you find your voice to be that ally, then you might start to slowly feel like you can get into some of these other strategies for confronting. But that is not natural for most people, so don't worry about that. But just being here shows that you care and you want to make some change in the world, so that's great.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you said that, because I feel that same way. I also think that when I have more of the opinion is, and I know that what's right, and it's not about me. If I had to stick up for myself, it might be really hard, but when I'm sticking up for someone else, I know that that's wrong, what you're doing, saying that about her. I have more of a feeling like I can do that. Supporting myself is different, but my conflict to say, wait a minute, that's wrong, I think I understand that that's the right thing to do at that point, mentally. And then doing it is a whole other step, right?
Yeah, thank you. Very good. See another hand over here. So we're going to take a couple more comments. Yes.
I feel like something that has been talked about is checking with the victim to see if they really want our help, and I was really feeling that when I was the victim in the last scenario, thinking, thanks for stepping in, except tomorrow walking home from school, they're going to beat me up.
Right.
So I just wondered if there could be more about the checking in with, how do we check in with the person to make sure they want to.
That's a really good question. In that scenario where we don't give you a whole lot of information, you don't even know if you know that person, right? If you were in school with that person and you knew them, I've told my kids, tell the teacher or tell the counselor you're worried about this person and that this is what you saw. So in that way, they're reporting it. But you're absolutely right. Things can 100% get worse for someone, especially in that kind of a setting. And that's why in a setting with students in a school, I was saying that showing that support after the fact, whether it's that person sending them a text, just letting them know the next day, hey, I saw that, I didn't know if I should step in, but you didn't deserve that again, or can I help in some way? And then if they know the person, if they don't, it's harder. But I've heard kids say dumb things like talking about their bikes, like your bike is so gay. And I was talking with my two young kids, and I go, your bike is a homosexual? And my kids were like, oh God, Mom, no, just stop. Because I didn't know if they knew these kids. And they were like, no, it means stupid. And I'm like, well, just say stupid. And what's wrong with that bike? He has a nice bike. Kids are just awful, right? They can say stupid things. But I think just calling them out and making them think about what they're actually saying sometimes will make them look stupid, and then maybe they'll think about it. So it's something that we have to just start to spread, take away some of these words, stop some of these words.
What about other adults when they're when they're doing that, when they're making comments, ethnic comments or whatever, and there's no victim, but that's hard to deal with. What do you suggest about that?
That is so true. Like, you know, the holidays, I don't know how many of you have, you know, the racist uncle or whomever, you know, that always tells these dumb jokes. But in that circumstance where I think you're talking about like total strangers just going off at the mouth.
Or even anybody.
I honestly think that people who want a platform, I don't want to give them more attention. And so I really don't address that. Like, I'm not going to give them more attention because that's what they want. But if it is, like, for the first time at Thanksgiving, oh my God, this is being live streamed. I hope none of my family is watching this. this person said, started like this joke of like, you know, a guy goes up to a rabbi, and I said, wait, I'm going to stop you right there. Is this an anti-Semitic joke? And he goes, I don't know, I don't think so. And I go, why don't you just stop right there, because I'm probably not going to think it's funny. And he stopped, and I was like, oh my God, I headed it off at the pass. I'm going to do that like every time. So, you know, if you do know the person, that's a very different situation. If you don't, I think sometimes like not giving people more attention is probably safer. Yeah. And if they're not directly targeting someone, there's not like, you know, harassment or something, you know, criminal. There's no criminal wrongdoing. So. All right. So I think there's one more comment, and then I want to make sure.
One more.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just back to the situation. Sandy did a similar thing to Martha, where came up and acted like she knew me on the train. Sorry. And like, don't you know my neighborhood? Yeah, I think I know you. And I can see where it would have gone that way, but this way, exactly what you guys do, really. And that was really helpful. So she sort of respected me. And the other person's like, ugh, you know, just sort of went away. So that was helpful.
Yeah, I like that, instead of disorienting the person, saying, don't I know you? I live right around you. So that they don't feel like you're just stalking them. All right.
Thank you, Rena, and thank all of you for being brave and doing some role playing together. So, as you might remember from the 5 Ds, one of them was document, and we didn't get a chance to go into that. And this actually gets to, Lynn, I think your question that was shared by someone else about the strength and or familiarity with putting yourself in situations that are filled with conflict. Document is something that everybody can do. You can always do this when there's a hate crime that's happened or is happening. You can always think to yourself, I can be a moral witness in any situation. I can always document what's happening. So if something's happening where you just don't feel like you can be an upstander, you can be an upstander as someone who's taking documentation. You can make notes on your phone. What time is it, right? Where are you? A brief description of who the offender is, of what the scenario is. And then we're going to provide you information, as you see right here from the Chicago Lawyers Committee. There's a confidential hotline number that you can call. And one of the reasons the Chicago Lawyers Committee has done this is because they know how difficult it is for people who are targeted to interact with the police. That's why this is a confidential hotline. So no matter who is being targeted, this hotline is confidential so that they can get information about how to engage with our very strong hate crime legislation here in Illinois. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the resources that we have as upstanders to document. So this is part of the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, the Hate Crime Project. And what I love about this is knowing that for however many decades, there have been people, lawyers mostly, who have been so concerned with what they've seen in terms of hate crimes that they agitated and advocated and beat the bushes with their legislators for years to enact very robust hate crime legislation here in the state of Illinois. So the state is our ally if you can work through, safe places like the Chicago Lawyers Committee. And I'm going to run through some of what they present. So the purpose is to fight violent crimes perpetuated because of race, ethnic origin, religion, sexual orientation, disability, and gender. We seek to reduce hate crime and increase reporting of these crimes. The basis for discrimination are race, sexual orientation, ethnic origin, religion, gender, and as you see that circle says the least amount of reporting is on gender identity. That was just added within the last 2 years to the Illinois statutes, and physical or mental disability. The most common are battery, assault, criminal damage to property, covers theft, criminal trespass to residence, car, disorderly conduct, mob actions, telephone or computer harassment. And these are covered under Illinois hate crime statute. They're adding social media and also hate crimes against seniors. So that may have been approved. Some of this information is over a year old. Institutional vandalism. There's an increased penalty for these hate crimes. So if a church is attacked, a synagogue, mosque, other place of religious worship, in a cemetery, a mortuary, other burial memorial for the dead, in a school, educational facility, all buildings, in public parks, ethnic or religious community centers, the penalties have been increased if there are documentations and reports of hate crimes in those areas. This is an example that happened in November of 2016. Some of you are familiar with the downtown synagogue on the Loop, and the window was smashed and swastikas were put on the window. And they apprehended this man, Stuart Wright, who had also visited Lincoln Methodist Church in Pilsen, where he has an apartment address. And at the church, he began asking people about their immigration status. Police were notified of his behavior, so someone called to report this hate crime. Wright is from a wealthy suburban family, has his master's degree in accounting from DePaul University. And I put that down there because there is no descriptor, there's no stereotype of someone who will do this. Someone who you would think would otherwise not be involved in this has done it. And he was prosecuted under the Illinois hate crime laws. This is an example of anti-Muslim threats. It's difficult to hear, but I don't know how many of you can see it. But these are letters that are a letter that was sent to a mosque. There was a great moment, was it over a year ago, when a cemetery was desecrated and Jews and Muslims came together to put these gravestones back and begin dialogue, and it was really a marvelous expression of solidarity together. However, communities need more information, they need support and ways to come together to address hate crimes, which is one of the reasons that we're doing these trainings, is that so you are empowered with information about how to be upstanders together. The underreporting of hate crimes continues to impede the work of community groups seeking to combat them. So that's what we're going to talk about next. These are the FBI crime statistics for 2015. I know these are old, but the way the pie breaks out is actually very similar in recent statistics. So you can see the biggest percentage is race, ethnicity, ancestry bias. Hate crimes for religious bias are at 19.7%, sexual orientation bias 17.7%, gender identity bias 1.7%, disability bias 1.2%. Gender identity bias is growing, not ironically, I think because of especially the trans movement for justice, because these movements are actually growing in their power, there's more pushback. So those percentages are rising. Hate crimes due to race and ethnicity continue to dominate the yearly stats. African Americans continue to be the largest targeted group at, quote, abominably high rates. And as I just said, there's growing awareness about high rate of attacks, especially against trans women of color, particularly African American trans women. The underreporting of hate crimes is a big issue. It's widely accepted that there are many more hate crimes than are reported. That's based on how uncomfortable you feel being an upstander is the same reason people don't want to report these things. A denial and lack of knowledge by law enforcement authorities. There's lots of people who don't trust the cops for various reasons, and we understand what those are. That's why the Chicago Lawyers Committee has provided this confidential hotline so they can steer you through a conversation and counsel you about when to get a prosecutor involved, when to get law enforcement involved. I just have to say this, but if there's an emergency, you should call 911, okay? However, as an upstander, knowing that there are various situations where people who are targeted could be offended and the situation could be made worse, you have to make difficult choices. So I just have to say that. Call 911 if it's an emergency, but if it's not, like, you have to make a judgment call. Call the Chicago Lawyers Committee if it's a hate crime and it sounds like some of these categories. There's a lack of incentive to collect data on behalf of law enforcement authorities. there's an unfunded mandate. There's no penalties for not doing it. So there's no incentive for law enforcement to do this. There's a lack of training for local law enforcement in hate crime legislation, and there are political pressures not to report, of course, that we know with the LaQuan Donald case. This is on the victim side. They may not want to report. They don't have the information that we have, the hate crime laws that we have. Lack of knowledge about where to report it, lack of trust in law enforcement, fear of reprisal, as we've talked about today. And then there are cultural and language barriers. Trends in underreporting mean that we do not know exactly who's affected. So now that you've gone through this training, you've got some more information, you can be a real ally of the Chicago Lawyers Committee and know the number to call to keep statistics updated. CLC presses for the apprehension and charging of all perpetrators, bringing the most serious charges possible, including hate crime, and encouraging good prosecutor preparation in a speedy trial. They have all kinds of resources on their website. You'll see on that card, or the sheet, there's a URL that you can interact with in terms of reporting hate crimes. But just feel free to call them. Julie Justice is one of their great organizers, and she'd be happy to talk to you about anything. And they have all kinds of PowerPoint presentations and information about hate crime legislation. Yeah, so that's the number, Julie Justice. And you have the number there on your sheet. What are some ways to stop hate now? Well, you're doing it, so give yourselves a round of applause because you're being trained in how to stop hate. So thank you for doing this. Alert your community if you're targeted, if you hear about an attack or a threat. Find or create positive action supporting those who are targeted. Stand up in solidarity. Make a powerful force against hate. As those who are targeted lead the way, diverse groups of people stand up together to show that an attack on one is an attack on all. Allow communities that are directly affected to lead. If you're in a relationship, allow those communities to define their comfort level and find out how you can be an ally. Get active. Organize rallies, vigils, teach-ins, community town halls, dinners. One of the things I love about living in E-Town is we're an active bunch up here. We just recently got most of the city budget saved from having all these essential services cut. And I'll tell you, the mayor did not like having all those people up there for open comment. So, we have a strong base in the interfaith community and other communities here in Evanston. So we'll continue to be active. Okay, let's go for any last minute questions. You want to let Gail, could you take this?
Any final? So I felt like a lot of the role plays we did were extreme examples, and definitely, after this training, hopefully some of us will be more upstanders now. But I think there's small microaggressions that happen on a regular basis, that happen in our home, that happen in our school, workplace. Those are areas that we can be upstanders as well. And as a person that gets a lot of microaggressions on a daily basis, it's kind of like it's a mosquito bite, right? It keeps happening, and then all of a sudden that mosquito bite becomes more of an annoyance. So why wait for that person to have that mosquito bite get so escalated? It would be nice as an upstander to just stand up and say, as a coworker, oh, it seems like that's a common, So I think that we don't have to wait for something extreme to happen. We can do it when there's a subtle comment being said, like a microaggression or a micro inequality.
Yeah, that's great. That's an excellent point, and in fact, you can do that also in your workplaces. So I'm now the executive director of a housing group in Chicago, and one of the things that we just went over is we have a set of values. We have a value statement, and we make sure that it's on our website, but most importantly, it's also within the workplace. So, it sort of prevents that from even happening. But yeah, being able to call on some of these microaggressions is a great point. Thank you.
I think to piggyback on that, I think one thing that I was talking about earlier when we were first introducing ourselves is the value of these kinds of sessions and continuing to do this work ourselves, because the more I read, I realize I've said microaggressions and I need to get really educated about how I'm interacting with other people. So there's so many levels of this, but I don't want to forget the daily stuff that I'm responsible for too.
Yes, yeah, and there's training around there's another common sort of buzzword in addition to microaggression is implicit bias. Have any of you heard that phrase?
for. Yeah. So that's another thing, like examining your own implicit biases.
One of the issues that we discussed when we were doing the role playing was the legality around recording or photographing someone. Do you know what the laws are? Are you allowed, is it legal for you to record somebody or photograph them in one of these situations?
Yeah, one of the things that I do know for sure is you can't post a video. Let's say you took a video of a harassment or some incident. You are not allowed to post it without the permission of the person being harassed. But some of these other questions I don't feel particularly qualified to respond to. Do you know, Rena?
Actually, I was told by the police one time not to record a stop. And I was like, that is not right. So I asked the officers that I'm training now, can I not record it? And they're like, no, if it's happening in the public sphere, you can totally record it. So, but like Gail said, I would be very careful not to actually get the face or identity of the person that's being targeted. If you're going to do it maybe from behind, and just get the harasser, not even their face necessarily, but if you can get what's happening, that's showing the impact, right? More than trying to publicly call someone out or scandalize them, because I do worry about some of that public call out that's happening on social media, where I think that's very counterproductive. I think that it's more important to call someone in if you know them, if it's somebody at the soccer game who's totally unhinged, to like have a conversation on the side instead of posting their picture or their video on Facebook and totally damaging the family. I don't think that helps.
Let's take the pledge.
Yeah, let's do the pledge.
Let's take the pledge.
We'll take the pledge. So on the other side of your sheet, on the other side of the hate crime hotline. Oh, another thing I wanted to make sure to mention before we get into this is also report to the city of Evanston if this happens here, because the city might otherwise say, oh, there are no hate crimes here. No one's reporting anything. So in addition to the lawyers committee, if
Anybody need a pen?
You're also reporting to the town. So how about, what do you think, Daniel? Should we all read about together? Okay. We're all going to take the Evanston Upstander pledge.
Quick question, what about those of us who don't live in Evanston?
Well, take the, what community are you in?
Rogers Park.
Okay, the Rogers Park Upstander pledge. I was stroking. So the Upstander pledge. All right, so we'll get reading. We should all be able to move freely and participate fully in the world around us, comfortable in our own skin, no matter what we look like or how we identify. I pledge to do something when I see someone being harassed in any public space. I plan to educate myself about how Western lives, how it affects people differently based on their identities, and what I can do to help, long and short term. I promise to share my experience with harassment in public space and encourage my loved ones and neighbors to do the same, so that others know they are not alone. And we invite you to take this home, sign it, post it on your refrigerator, bulletin board, whatever space you will often see. And we also have right here the pledge, and you can sign your names here, so you have made your commitment public. And I'd like to invite my other two, Daniel and Rena, here to close.
Thank you so much for your time and coming out on this snowy day, and for all of your comments. And we integrate, your great points, and we'll start to change our presentation based on what we're learning from you. So thanks for your time and for being with us today.
Yes, and we don't have an evaluation, but if you have comments or suggestions or scenarios that you would like to see, worked on in the future, please email them to the Evanston for All email. And if you're still here, I will read them and respond if you don't have time. I'm not going to put them on you. So I have a lot of events coming up, and I don't actually have the first sheet in front of me, but out on the bulletin board, they're posted, and I think there were like a few few copies at the back. But really, over Martin Luther King weekend, today, tomorrow, Monday, there are so many different events. Duke School is doing a courageous conversation on how to talk to your kids about race and racism. And some of our graduates from the Transforming White Privilege series are going to be facilitating that. And I also wanted to just point out a couple of people in the audience. Can I acknowledge, Heather, the work that your parents do in terms of immigration rights and reform? They have been, since I was a kid, doing this, and I am so grateful for all you do, because I'm from a family of immigrants. But Heather Sweeney, who's also very involved here in Evanston community and District 65 and 202, has put together the Navigating Diversity in Evanston series that is open to all the public, and so there are other events coming up on that PTA, District 65 PTA website. And Wendy Yanow, who is one of my co-facilitators for Transforming White Privilege, is running for Oakton Community College School Board in April. So if you don't know Wendy, please talk to her. I'm so excited. And again, thank you all for taking the time to come out.
Thanks to UCE and Megan and
yes,
Eileen.
thank you, Eileen, for
Thank you,
hosting,
Adam.
for the food, and Adam.
Thank you.
Got our check up and running, so thank you all for coming. Yeah.
So I think, did everyone enter your email in the check-in? Yeah, so